again, everyone. Welcome back. Nice to see you. Thank you for joining me. This week, for your viewing pleasure, well, it's not really viewing pleasure, I have a cardboard box. Last week, I showed you my wonderful sword. This week, I have a cardboard box. It is a cardboard box full of sculpts, though. In fact, there's a few more sculpts on the side there that I need to pack into it, which are going up to Chris, the mold maker, the end of this week. There's, I think, about 8 molds worth of stuff in here now, so lots of stuff. So expect to be seeing some new significant releases from Oakbound coming up very shortly. I think it'll take him a couple of weeks, maybe even a month, to make the molds because there's quite a lot of them. But he's back and functioning now, thankfully. His broken arm has mended. So yeah, I will take these up to him and we'll see what he makes of them. So look out for that in the near future. In the meantime, you want to be looking at another one of these, don't you? Haha, another vintage White Dwarf. This is one from my childhood. This is White Dwarf 209. This is May 1997. So let's have a look. Okay, here we go. No prizes for guessing what's going to be in this edition. Some High Elves, right? Yes, Warhammer Armies High Elves. And also Imperial Tactics for Epic 40k, Space Marine Chapter Masters, Mail Order Trolls, Organising Your Epic Army, Dark Elf Cauldron of Blood, and How to Make Modular Terrain. It's all there on the cover. You don't need me to open the pages, but we're going to anyway because there's lots of beautiful stuff in here, and hopefully that's piqued your attention. The plastic Space Marine Terminators from Space Hulk are now available in a box by themselves, because honestly they were so great. It makes sense to have cheaper Terminators out there. Battles in the Underhive, the Best of White Dwarf articles for Necromunda is released, along with an account of how the Games Workshop's Necromunda campaign is ongoing. Some more releases, of course, for Epic 40,000, the Game of the Hour, which we'll come to a bit later on. Some more High Elves and some more Dark Elves, and the Shadow of the Horned Rat that we looked at a couple of months back. Here it is, the new High Elf army book by Tuomas Purinen, with the classic elf buildings, of course. Yeah, if you're familiar with the story of the High Elves, this is probably not news to you. Here's all of the, but probably a bit more fleshed out from 4th edition to here. Obviously a lot of love for the High Elves, the fact that they got redone so quickly into 5th edition, after being kind of the poster children for good forces in 4th edition. Yeah, obviously a lot of love in the studio for the High Elves. I remember this article fairly significantly. I was never a big High Elf fan, but I really liked this guy with his this hero with his dragon helm and his steed. And I remember staying with my grandparents in Basingstoke and them taking me to a Games Workshop and buying this champion in an actual Games Workshop. Visiting a Games Workshop was not something that I did very often because there wasn't one anywhere near where I lived, so that was a bit of a treat. And I really remember getting this guy, and he is, I say, although I haven't actually, I can't remember. Let me have a look. Where's my shelves? No, it's not him. It's a different one. All right, ignore me. I'm talking it out of my backside. I don't know what's happened to him. I had a High Elf general who's become the general on my Wood Elf War Dragon, which is what I was looking at. But I think maybe I used his legs. I can't remember what I've done with the torso of this guy. He must be somewhere in my bits box. Anyway, never mind. Otherwise generally not such a fan of this High Elf release. Everything looking a bit more chunky. Particularly the horses. The horses, I know they're not as big as the first plastic Citadel horses, but pretty massive. And they're lovely sculpts. They're Trish sculpts, so they're anatomically wonderful, and the character in them is brilliant. I just feel like they were maybe upscaled, like, I don't know, 5% too much, 10% too much. They just look a little bit silly big. Yeah, I'm not a fan of these guys with their floppy, feathery hats. They look a bit weird. But then I'm not a fan of the wood elves of this era either, for sort of similar reasons. The aesthetic was, as with the orcs, starting to shift a bit more towards the 6th edition plastics aesthetics. Even in the metal miniatures, they were starting to lose that crisp, small sculpting that was prevalent up to sort of the middle of 4th edition. I think the Empire sculpts were kind of the last of the very precise, very finely sculpted models, with a few exceptions. Some of the Bretonnian models are lovely. I picked up I'm deviating from the magazine, but the Rapance de Lyonesse model reminded me. Where is it? There. I got like the sculpting on this is just beautiful, absolutely beautiful. I got a voucher from Games Workshop because last year I bought some stone trolls from them. First thing I bought from Games Workshop in a very long time. I bought some stone trolls, and they sent me a voucher for £10. So I got a heavily discounted Green Knight from the web store last week, which was great. And Games Workshop has taken more of my money in the last 6 months than they have in the last 16 years, I think. So I guess maybe that's a good sign of where the company is going with regards to homage to the olden days. But I'm not picking up any of the plastics. Anyway, enough of my digressions. Back onto this issue. This is looking at chapter masters, generic chapter masters. So basically, Ian is saying lots of you are wanting to use the chapter masters from Dark Angels, Blood Angels, Ultramarines, all of the other ones that we've detailed chapter masters for. I think that might be it. But anyway, you've been wanting to use them in your own chapters. That's fine, but why not have a go at coming up with your own chapter masters for your own chapters? So he's given a basic profile and then a selection of kind of strategies and special abilities that you can pick from to point your chapter master accordingly, to give your own kind of flavor of chapter master, which is cool. Here are some pictures of Space Marines. It's hard to get a more iconic image from 90s Warhammer 40,000, isn't it, than a brightly coloured Blood Angel or Space Wolf or Ultramarine on a Goblin green base against a blue sky. But lovely to see the White Panthers there. They were always a bit of a favourite of mine. Here again are those plastic Terminators coming into their own. And now we're looking at Dark Elves. We looked at the High Elves, now we're looking at the Dark Elves, because this month the Cauldron of Blood is released. More big hair Witch Elves with this very spiky cauldron full of bubbling, horrible goop, gory stuff. Here's how to build an army for Epic 40,000. Now, it's a very similar way to the way that you would build an army for 40k at this time, but it's so different from the strategy cards that we saw in the previous, in last week's video, when we were looking at the orc vehicles in Epic. Now, picking from these cards was a really innovative kind of visual way of building up a force, and to jettison that really, I think, put off a lot of Epic players at the time. They kind of felt like they were losing the essence of Epic, going to a sort of regular points-based army building list. So here's an article that tries to convince you that it's a good thing, but losing that kind of visual, which is interesting, because in other ways, like with there probably aren't any pictures of the blast tokens here because it's not discussing them. But with things like the blast tokens being an actual visual thing on the battlefield, they were doing a lot to make it a very visual game, but losing that kind of visual force organization chart to go for a more kind of free-form points building system. Last month we had a look at sculpting Citadel miniatures, how that's done, how they're cast, and a look into the kind of mould shop. In this month we're going forwards a bit and looking at the people who are picking and packing all of your orders, the mail order trolls. Here they are in the archive vaults, digging out those ancient moulds for people who called in and went, oh, I want a left arm from the 1974. I'm making this up because obviously they weren't doing multi-part models in 1974. All right. This part from a 1982 such and such, 10 years back, hasn't been in production for a good 6 years. And someone's going to the vaults to find it. Not necessarily an economical way of running something, but damn cool, and I wish that they still did it, because I did not have a credit card to take advantage of that situation often enough, although I did put in a couple of calls. I did do a couple of calls to mail order doing exactly that, saying, oh yes, I want this bit and this bit and this bit, and giving my parents' credit card details, sat at the bottom of the stairs on our landline, probably costing a fortune in phone bills as well, going through these paper catalogues, and lots of old White Dwarf mail order pages, and going, yes, I want this bit and this bit and this bit. What a glorious service that was. And there you go, we offer a complete back catalogue service. Absolutely glorious service. Here are those pages from the 5th edition armies book, from the rules. This was an epic force organisation chart, I think, with the nice John Blanche picture on the back. And here is an account of Space Marines in Epic 40,000, because there are lots of them in the box, and of course they are the foundation of the Warhammer 40,000 universe at this time and ever since. Here's what you get in the 40k box by comparison, and then some discussion of green skin magic. So remember, we have the one magic book now, and that pulled everything together, and we're still running off the Orcs and Goblins 4th edition armies book, which mentioned things like eating madcap mushrooms and goblinoid characters drawing magical energy from being near to other green skins. So this is an article discussing that, how to get the most out of your shamans of various types, along with those charts from the Orcs and Goblins armies book presented here, I guess, so that if you didn't have that armies book, now that we're in 5th edition, maybe that armies book wasn't so widely available anymore. People want to use their Orcs and Goblins, so here's how you use their magic-y types, which I don't know, might have been covered in the Arcane Magic book, but I'm not sure if it was. There's the Armageddon battle being mentioned again, 5 years on. The new metal is out, the new white metal is out, and the lead metals are being sold off. So here it says, our poor shop staff are going to have to replace the lead models in one go, and here's where you come in. We're not asking you to stay behind later and restock the shelves. We're pointing out that all the lead miniatures still have the old prices on, because the new metal is more expensive, as it still is. Lead-free metal is much more expensive than lead tin traditional mix, and it wears the molds out faster. So you've got a higher mold replacement cost. So they're incurring higher costs, so the prices have to go up. But you can still buy the lead ones at the old price. Now, I remember people talking about the great lead sell-off, where you could go into Games Workshop and buy packets of lead-containing miniatures for super duper cheap because they just wanted to get rid of them. And maybe that came slightly later, but maybe they're slightly misremembering this. This sale was not really a sale. It was like a Black Friday sale where everything else was going up instead of them going down. But maybe they're correctly remembering after all. Robin Dews provides his own article in his own magazine. Well, actually, he's not his magazine anymore, is it? He's not the editor at this point, because the editor at this point is Jake Thornton. Yes, there you go. It's Jake Thornton. So Robin Dews making a return to the pages of White Dwarf to talk about making the battlefields, modular battlefields in this case for Epic 40,000, but providing an opportunity to talk about modular battlefields in general, and of course then to bring in Nigel Stillman to talk about these boards that we've seen before in How to Make Wargames Terrain and the article that accompanied it in White Dwarf, but importantly to take another look at these two boards from the Perry's collection. Actually, much bigger images in this one. They were tiny images in the last one, and you can kind of see up close. Maybe there's not so much going on this board after all, but this one, still this craggy board, still one of my favourite ever boards to have seen in White Dwarf, and I've never seen any photos of any models being played on it because it's a Perry board and not a Games Workshop studio board. Neither do I know that this board still exists. I would love to see more photos than just this one, even if it's slightly larger. I'd love to see more photos of that board. And then here is a Lizardman versus Nurgle battle report. The pox-ridden Skaven, in fact, not Nurgle. I mean, it involves Nurgle, but it's Clan Pestilence, really. Clan Pestilence spreading tropical diseases through the Lizardmen army, which seems entirely appropriate for them. Obviously, the Great Unclean One here is I'm gonna call it a Nurgle army because I mean, look, you've got an army of plague, unit of plague ones and a unit of clan rats here. Or actually, they're Skaven slaves, 20 Skaven slaves, but mostly you've got Nurgle demons and beastmen. So I'm going to call it Nurgle, but anyway, Clan Pestilence summoned army. Yes, a very small, considering that this is a supposedly Lord Skrolk's army. Very little on the Skaven front. These demons being rather expensive when you compare them to the great horde of Lizardmen that is myriad skinks, 6 Croxigor, a Slarn Mage Priest, a Stegodon, 2 Salamanders, 3 Pterodons, 3 massive great blocks of Saurus warriors there, and a unit of Temple Guard in the middle there. Massive thing. So I don't actually think this was a balanced. Let me see. I don't think they went for a balanced army here. Does it tell you where points are? So this is a last stand with the Lord Skrolk's army in the middle of the table, surrounded by Lizardmen. So I guess they're not going for a completely balanced scenario. Excellent. More of a kind of breakout scenario. So the idea being that the forces of Nurgle Plaguey Doom have got to try and either take down as many people as they can before they're inevitably snuffed out, or break out through the line one way or another. Did they succeed? Well, no, in short words. But they only lost by points, so they must have done pretty well holding their own there in the middle of the table. Here are those beautifully detailed epic vehicles with insane numbers of options. Here are those high elves that I'm not so keen on. Here are those Croxigor that are really fun. I think they're homages to the Gorgaz from particularly this one. I mean, that poses exactly the Gorgaz from the Gaiac Attack box, and they're designed by Alan Perry, and the Perrys did the Gaiac Attack box, so I think this is very much an homage to that sculpt. But, prove me wrong. Here are the long-mouthed orcs and the pointy Night Goblin Shaman by Brian Nelson that I actually really like, along with the rest of the long-moored orcs that I really don't like. So, yeah, go figure. And there's Plastic Terminators, and there's a high elf book, and we're at the back, and we're looking at a rather glorious image. In fact, I'm going to try and zoom in on this if I can. Let's try and get that in as good focus as I can get on this wonderful image of this converted vehicle, whatever this is, this kind of Arbites riot control vehicle. Here are the old Arbites, and I remember seeing these in White Dwarf and going, those are fabulous, those are such Judge Dreddy figures, I really want those. And they didn't appear in the catalogue pages of White Dwarf, and they weren't in any of the current catalogues, and I could not work out what they were. I had no idea when these were created, what the kind of heritage of them was before the internet became a thing. So these were complete mystery figures to me. And these ones down here, I don't think I've seen anywhere else in White Dwarf I think recently somebody posted some pictures and they were converted, maybe even by Mike McVeigh himself. I don't know, but basically these are conversions of these guys, I think, with the riot shields and the battens just replacing the combat shotguns there. But yeah, really, really nicely done. And I think later on, Specialist Games, Fnatic and Specialist Games produced some Necromunda Arbites that were very similar to this with the riot shields and the battens. Understandably so, because these just look so fantastic. So there we go. There's a nice under Hy-Vee image, complete with lovely green swathe there in the middle of the courthouse lawn. To round off White Dwarf 209. So, hope you enjoyed that. I shall see you next week when we'll talk about something else. So, if you've enjoyed, like it, leave me a comment, subscribe, tell your friends, turn notifications on. You can join the channel if you want to find out about my sword. Otherwise, I shall see you next week. Take care.